about was just about 3, maybe 4 years ago. I went to Australia and I went through Heathrow, and almost everybody in this, lots of people in Heathrow were shape-shifting. There were reptilians walking around everywhere, right? Now some of this can be you decoding something about their aura, but other times it can be you're decoding what's really there rather than what their emotions are projecting. And I've had that instance in the Quarry Shopping Centre in Sydney as well, where nearly everybody there is looking is a reptilian, and full on, and they're much taller than they are as humans, and they're much bigger and much more powerful looking, big tails and all the rest of it. Full on it is, and but anyway, this Heathrow thing, I got on the plane and they swapped my seat for some reason, and I sat down in this other seat, and I noticed there was an Indian lady in the sari and everything sitting there, and she was looking at me intently like that, but her eyes were really lovely. She was really kind of, you could tell it was really loving whatever she was doing, she was doing something. I saw this guy in a seat in front of me just a little long. He rose up and turned into this huge reptilian, really aggressive. This air hostess came to me, and this don't happen, does it? She knelt down next to me, she put her hand on my knee, and she was going, "We're going to look after you, everything will be alright." Then this Indian lady, I heard this voice in my mind, and it was definitely coming from her. And she said, "You are a golden child and very special. We are looking after you." I thought, what's a golden child? I don't know. That's what she said. Yeah, maybe I don't know.
On another occasion, myself and a female MyLab friend were abducted together, and we were brought to an underground base in the high desert of Southern California, once again in the Victorville, Barstow area. And we were confronted by what appeared to us to be 3 military people. Again, one of them was taller than the other 2. The one that was the tallest was standing behind a lectern or a podium, and it was quite tall. And it was yelling at my friend and I. We were kind of made to stand at attention, several feet away from these 3 beings. They appeared as military personnel with the short hair, etc., but one of them was in the guise of a high-ranking officer, and the high-ranking officer was irate. He was screaming at us, yelling at us, "What are we doing? Like, how do we know so much?" Right? And I knew immediately that this tall being was not a human. I knew that it was really a reptilian, because they often assume the guise of military personnel. Sometimes these abductees in my labs in the underground bases can look at what's supposed to be a military person, but notice that they have vertical pupils, or notice that they don't communicate much, and once in a while they growl or they hiss or they do something to give themselves away. And while this tall general or this tall officer was berating the both of us, I looked at my friend and I said, "This is not a dream, this is real. We're having a real experience here, so remember this," right? And then the being, the assumed, supposed military guy just kept yelling at us. Eventually they sent us back. The reptilian symbology, which is common in the folkloric traditions of countless cultures throughout the planet and throughout history, is not so much a metaphor or an archetype as it is a way to describe the existence of these beings, that they really have existed all this time. and that they've played a role in the development of civilization, that they've intervened at critical points in human history. So this is why we are constantly bombarded with reptile symbology, serpent symbology, dragons, and so forth. It's not to do with any archetype or metaphor. It has to do with the existence of these beings and the occulted knowledge going way back that these beings are here and they've been involved with us all along.
One of the important things throughout all of their interaction with humanity was not to be recognised and not to be seen, because humans record in stone. We're very good at that. We create. We're fantastic like that as a race. So they recreate. The reptilians didn't want that. You will see it occasionally in some of the Sumerian or Assyrian, Babylonian carvings. Occasionally, you will also see it in some of the Mayan or Aztec items. What you're much more likely to see are renditions of feline species from the Egyptian times, because they weren't covered by the same protocol. So they weren't, there was no ban on depicting them, whereas there is a ban, there still is now a ban on depicting reptilians, and I'll give you absolute proof of that when I did that very nice interview on the Today programme with Holly Willoughby and Schofield, and I did two drawings, one of a mantis and one of a reptile, and I was told point blank we're not allowed to put the reptile up because they were going to have me as a backdrop, them as a backdrop to me. So the stills I've got, which they very kindly sent me, I'm being interviewed with them, and behind me is a picture of the mantid. But originally, Schofield and gang were going to have the mantid and the reptile, and somebody very high up said we're not allowed. They didn't even know what it was called. All they said to me was, we've been told we can't put this one up. So there's a blanket that goes out, and hence, if you think about what your title of this DVD is, because we're coming round to that now, and you think about that chapter in The Greatest Secret that David Icke wrote, which was don't mention the reptiles, and that's a fact, and David's absolutely right, that the system doesn't want to publicise them because they have signed an agreement not to publicise them. It's to keep them out, so you can talk about the greys as much as you want. That's not an issue. You can talk about the mantid as much as you want, because they don't manipulate humanity. The reptile race that we're talking about manipulates humanity and has done for thousands of years, and has a covenant with the elite humans who run the world that they will always be in the shadows.
You're awfully quiet, John. I feel a little underwhelmed for a man who asks questions for a living.
I got a million questions. But let's start with my boss.
John, what if a man's faults are not his own? What if certain men and women were pliable, manageable, accessible?
Accessible? Manageable? You mean controlled?
There are levels of control, John, depending on the situation. This situation required a little show and tell. Others are a little more intrusive. Behind the scenes, deals were done, but they weren't necessarily beneficial to the populace. In modern times, phase one has always been to make you aware of our presence. Over time, we could gain acceptance through the use of literature, religion, music, movies.
If you look at two themes of movies in recent times, and some of them not so recent times, but it's a big theme now, and I don't go to the movies very much because it's all very violent and stuff like that most of the time, but if it's for my research, I'll obviously go. One is a kind of a reptilian theme that you pick up, and the other one is, many times
incorporated into the reptilian field and in alien invasions is a well beyond Orwellian society where humans are under total control of a vicious police state and a tiny elite.
As far as movies and media being possible leaks to the truth about non-humans, or in particular the reptilians, I think this is certainly possible, and I think that there are several movies that stand out in my mind as being movies that might be leaks. Well, in particular, Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, for which I think that he was murdered. He was warned not to publish it, and he said, "To heck with you," and he was killed shortly after the release of the movie. And also Rosemary's Baby shows even a reptilian kind of baby at the end of the movie, and that those kind of movies seem to be kind of more realistic leaks, if you were. And then you have John Carpenter's They Live and The Thing and Aliens, which I think are all possible relevant information or visions, you might say, inspirations for what's really happening.
I think if you look at John Carpenter, the creator of They Live, if you look at his movie-making history, which includes Satanism and horror and whatever, this guy has at least some knowledge of what's happening. And I had to laugh. I said this in a book once, years ago, and someone wrote to John Carpenter saying what I'd said, and he wrote back to him. I saw the letter saying, no, it wasn't the aliens, inside the people. I was symbolizing the Republicans, and you go, yeah, John, all right, yeah, okay, you were, yeah. I mean, anyone who's seen They Live will laugh at that.
I watched They Live about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, on YouTube. I watched it on there. Now that is so real. What I've found in life is that very often the things that kind of I find distressing or are distressing for me at the time, I don't watch. I don't know why, but I don't watch. People say, oh, you should watch this. And I don't. And then it comes to a point where I feel that, yeah, okay, I'll watch that or I'll read that. And I will. And then I know why it was I didn't watch it before. I wasn't ready to sort of integrate that into where I was at the time. But the They Live are so accurate. So accurate. They Live. It's classic. And that time back too, where you have a small number of people who are actually not what they seem. They look human to people in everyday life, but when the guy put the sunglasses on that allowed him to decode reality on another level, that was the symbolism of it. He saw that they actually, behind the human form, they weren't human at all. And they were the people in power, they were the bankers, they were the politicians, they were the president, they were some of the police. And also, when he put the glasses on that subliminal level, he could see all the subliminal messages all around him, telling him to stay asleep, to not question, to obey authority. And it was a movie, it was kind of a B movie, wasn't it? A kind of, most people would never have heard of, and yet it was way ahead of its time in portraying the world that we're actually living in.
To see that movie, it's amazing. In the old video store days, you would find this movie in the children's section. The story starts out with a celestially driven cataclysm. An asteroid comes and wipes out the dinosaurs, and through some kind of weird kind of alchemical process, an alternate reality is created where the survivors of the reptile survivors of the surface went underground into an alternate dimension, and they became the rulers, and they were shapeshifters. They were shapeshifters between human and reptilian. The head reptile was Dennis Hopper, if you've ever seen that movie. And it was another dimension that was parallel to our dimension. And it had to do with bloodlines, it had to do with all kinds of stuff. And of course, the protagonists, Luigi and Mario, they defeat the reptilians, right? Very interesting story.
When I was growing up in the 70s, a TV show that I really loved was Land of the Lost. It involved a pocket universe where dinosaurs lived and advanced beings who turned out to be the ancestors of these primitive Sleestaks had built these pylons, which were devices used for interdimensional travel and time travel, as well as such things as regulating the weather in the Land of the Lost. But the Sleestaks, which the advanced beings, they called them the Altrusians, eventually evolved into were like barbaric, kind of vaguely reptilian beings that lived underground. They were very tall and menacing, but there are some definite parallels between the storylines in Land of the Lost and the research on reptilians living underground and being able to travel through portals and so forth.
Last year, the movie came out, Ender's Game. Wonderful story about how we're assuming that these inhuman insectoid ETs are somehow hostile and dangerous to us just because we've got this mindset of fighting everything out there that moves, and actually they're not. This is not what they're trying to do at all. And again, it takes a little kid to have the wisdom to actually discern what's really happening here.
For most people who have an alien experience, they really don't know what they're seeing, because they can only see with their eyes and believe what's happened to them. When you have an association with these creatures, and I can't be the only one, but when you have a long association with them, you have certain agreements, and these creatures are not permitted to deceive me. And I say I'm 54 now, and I haven't lied to me yet, or I haven't caught them out yet. So they're either incredibly good liars, but when I ask a straight question, I usually get an answer, or they will refuse to answer rather than give me a lie.
The revelation that the ever-growing missing persons reports were somehow connected to alien abduction phenomena seemed ludicrous to me. Inside of me, an inert feeling to repel the information, and I didn't know why. As a researcher and journalist, it is built into my psyche to question everything I'm told. When I raised my doubts about this one evening in a taped conversation with X, I could never have prepared myself for what happened.
Sorry, but I can't have you screaming like a little girl, so you've got to promise me you'll be quiet. If I wanted to harm you, you would be harmed. John, please. Sit. You needed a reason to take this further, and I just gave it you. When I did this, I put both of us in danger. People like you don't need people like me unless it's important. We consider you important, John. You're not special. You're not the chosen one. You're not the savior. But you're a hell of a journalist, which is good for us. Bad for you. What, you think this story was your idea? We needed to trigger you. That's what we do, John. We poke you, prod you, coerce you, make you do things we can't. Well, not openly anyway. For now, just know some of us are trying to help. You got a friend in me.
So what? This is an invasion. Take over the planet and kill everyone. Then what?
If it was up to certain members of our community, yes. But it's a little more complicated than that, John. Plus, we've been there, done that. Wasn't pretty. I look at it more as a occupation. I know you guys are fond of that.
How is this possible? I mean, what about the government? What about our military?
What about? They work for us, John. We run the show. It's all an illusion. Nothing you experience here is real. Nothing. None of it. At least not in the way you think it is. Oh, it's work genius, John. Even after all this time, and we're talking a lot of time, the complexity of the plan still impresses the hell out of me. Yeah.
Sorry?
The answer to your question is yes. You were about to ask me about the little gray guys in your room as a kid. You know, little guys, big eyes, all serious and cold. Creepy little things. Yeah, they work for us, John. And you. And John, do you play chess?
Haven't we played enough games?
Well, if this were a game of chess, I'd be a knight. Our little gray friends would be the pawns.
And me? What piece am I in your game?
That's just it, John. You're not even in the game. But I'm here to change that.
I don't understand. Why are you here? What do you want?
What do we want? Where did we come from? When did we get here? That's a good question.